Hello and a really big warm welcome to this presentation from Pluralsight. My name is Andrew Mallett, and guess what? I'm going to be your instructor as I help guide you through managing Linux network configuration. As we work our way through this, we're going to take a look at some of our basic network utilities, or at least that's going to be the start. So we're going to make sure that we are familiar with the IP command, familiar with the ping command, and familiar with the trace path command. So we can quickly move out to our command line to gain some of this experience. Oh, and look at this, our glorious command line, and a command line where we can get to know some of our network utilities. Now, in previous versions of Linux, you would have to go through and learn things like the ifconfig command to get your IP configuration. You would need to know things like the route command to be able to manage and print route tables. You'd need to know the ARP command to manage the resolution from IP address to a MAC address on the network. Now, the nice thing about Linux is it's developed over a period of time, and we now have the Swiss Army knife that is the IP command. Let me show you. We can start off by displaying our IP address information. So we can use IP, address, and show. And then, of course, we're probably not surprised that we're going to be able to see the IP information for our interfaces. But it gets better than this. We can abbreviate it, and abbreviate it in a massive way. So I can just do the same thing with IPA. A is an unambiguous command, so we know it's going to be address, and show is the default option for address. So we see exactly the same thing, but really abbreviated. But you can manage the abbreviations yourself. If I want a slightly longer version, I can use IPADDR, so it's a little bit more obvious as to what's going on. Now, if you needed only to focus on IP version 4 information, then we can add the option -4. And of course, then we're only seeing IP version 4. If we did -6, we'd only see the IP version 6 information. If I wanted to look at it for a specific card, this is where it gets a little bit tricky. If I now go IP address ENS33, it thinks that ENS33 is a subcommand to address, so I have to add in the show option. So I can just use S for that if I so wish. But it isn't all about IP addresses. As I say, we have a Swiss Army knife where we can then combine many commands into one. Let me show you. IPR for IP route show. And I can use IPN for IP neighbor show, where we're looking at the resolution from IP address to MAC address. There are more options as well, but these are going to be the commonly used options. And we can see the advantage of our modern Linux systems and the IP command. Now, I do hope you enjoyed that on our IP command. There is a danger, though, that you might turn off when I tell you that I'm going to talk about the ping command now, but I would ask you to stay. There might be something interesting that you're going to pick up from this, and I really do believe it. So let's go through and look at the basics of what we know about ping. Ping can be used to test our network connectivity, and often we want to connect to the outside world, so let's check that we can connect through to the Google DNS server, that commonly known IP address of 8.8.8.8. In Linux, the ping is continuous, but if we want to emulate a Windows ping, we can put a count of 3, so we don't have to worry about the Control and C to stop the ping process. Now, that's all well and good, and I do accept you're probably well aware of this. But let's just mess things around a little bit. Let's try a Cloudflare DNS server, the IP address 1.0.0.1. Now, you're going to think, well, there's nothing different about this, but the IP address is a little bit more interesting, with those middle zeros. And IP version 4 does allow us to miss out the middle zeros. Let me just show you an address we're probably more familiar with. I can ping 127.0.0.1, my local host. But with middle zeros, look how I can reduce it to 127.1. Now that should give you a clue about our Cloudflare DNS server. That too has middle zeros, and the IP configuration will assume they are zeros if we miss them out. So if I now go through and try and ping 1.1, we can see that we're getting it expanded to 1.0.0.1. How clever is that? And what a simple tool to be able to ping and test connectivity to the outside world just by using 1.1. The final utility we will see in this demonstration is the use of trace path, where we can check the network path that a packet is taking to get to a destination. Here we're testing it back to that Cloudflare DNS server. So we start our journey on the local host before going through various software gateways to get to my home network. The router on my home network is 192.168.0.1, and we hit that before we get to my ISP. My ISP router, 10.53.38.153, then shows me going into the ISP's network. We bounce around in there for a little bit, and some devices will respond to the trace path request, others won't, hence the no replies. But hopefully this has been a great introduction to some of our network tools, and you're a little bit more familiar on how they can be used.